We have just been discussing Lewis Colson and the program that he is the founder of. And what we want to talk about now is, again, once we're faced with a challenge, how we don't submit to that challenge, but overcome the challenge. And Lewis was just sharing with us how he was diagnosed in 2009.
Yes, sir.
With his health challenges. But instead of just succumbing and just not being a participant, Lewis took action. His action had resulted in him going out into the community and telling his story, that he might be able to affect positive change in others who have a similar story. So he has formed a nonprofit corporation, Better Man Incorporated. And I want Lewis to tell us, once you were diagnosed in 2009, what was the first thing that came to you, your presence of mind?
Well, the first thing, to be honest, Calvin, for myself as well as my family members, that I was going to die. Most people who are diagnosed with prostate cancer, that's the first thing that comes to mind. And then, because, again, I knew that I wasn't going to die. And let me tell you now, even though in 2009 I was diagnosed and I went on my regimen, those 10 things I talked about, 2012, I stopped practicing some of those things that I mentioned. I was not taking any pharmaceutical drugs. I let stress come back into my life. In 2012, I was re-diagnosed not only with prostate cancer that now had risen to unknown levels. My kidneys failed. I was diagnosed with carcinoid tumors in my stomach, and I had hiccups for 5 months. 2012 was a very difficult time, but again, I reached down deep inside and I told my God that if it's His will for me to continue, I will continue to practice my 10 cells, but I'll reevaluate where I went wrong. And Brother Calvin, where I went wrong was that I stopped practicing my principles. And that's the part that I'm going to continue to emphasize to everybody that I talk to. You must practice your principles every day. And so when I went back to practicing my principles, I am very proud to know and to say that 2013, I'm not taking any pharmaceutical drugs, despite the fact that doctors said stage 4 prostate cancer, my kidneys failed, and carcinoid tumors. And for those people that want to know what carcinoid tumor is, it's a fancy word for saying you have stomach cancer. But again, I reject all of those things because the God that I serve says that you don't have to accept any of those. And that's why I always like to use the word I was diagnosed with, as opposed to accepting anything that they said, because it's God that's within me, the Holy Spirit, that says, Colson, you're going to go to the next level. And so that's why, regaining my weight, regaining my strength, that unless I tell someone that I literally was in the snarls of death, they wouldn't even know it. And so that's why I'm here as a living testimony in terms of what can happen when a person chooses to live a certain way for God.
Well, that's strong testimony, and our community needs to hear that. Our families need to hear that, and those who are going through need to hear that. I know lots of times when we have those personal challenges, we seem, like you brought it out earlier, you mentioned it, go through them by ourselves.
Yes.
So I'm very happy that you have chosen to rise to the occasion. And, spiritually, that's what it talks about. Our afflictions and our challenges is medicine for somebody else. As you're speaking truth and knowledge and wisdom right now, is somebody that is listening to this broadcast who's going to be affected, even as I'm listening and hearing your victory over not accepting what was told to you. You say, I know better, and that God has a purpose for me to fulfill, and you got busy.
And you know what's interesting, Calvin? 300,000 men a year are diagnosed with prostate cancer. 27,000 men who happen to be African Americans die from prostate cancer, which means that clearly 82% of those people who die from prostate cancer are African American males. Mm-hmm. That in and of itself should cause everybody to be alarmed. Why are we dying? Well, when you begin to start looking at our eating habits, when you start looking at how we deal with stress, when we start looking at the life choices that we make, then yes, we are the ones who are the victims. And that's why I'm here today to say, Calvin, that not only should one not be a victim, but you can be victorious. But you got to understand the facts. You got to understand who you are. You got to understand why you are. And so there's a lot of things. And so this has been a journey for me, Calvin, to be very honest. You know, I've been out on the road now speaking for a lot of years, but I never really looked at life the way that I do now. I'm just so grateful to be here for yet another day, because my life could have ended, you know, and when it ended, I know 2 weeks after I would have been gone, and folks would say, Lewis, who? Well, at least now I'm still here trying to touch folk and trying to give a message of encouragement that men can be better in what we do. We can touch our families. We can love our families. We can love our neighbors. We can love one another. But it has to be something that is purposeful. It's got to be with meaning. It's got to be with direction. It's got to be with guidance. And that's why Project Better Man is not just an organization that's give out little cliches, but we're about the business of trying to help men become better men, and starting with the young men to understand the roles that we have been rightfully given. And that's why, I'm out on the road now, and I feel that God has given me this whole new mandate to come out to talk, from a whole different perspective. I'm not a preacher. I'm not anyone other than God has saved me to do what I do. There are some folk who have had a chance when they watch Gangland on the History Channel, and they see that I talk a lot about the whole drug industry, which is what I used to talk about all the time. But one of the things that I didn't talk about in that particular production, as well as other production, I did talk about what do you do as an alternative, and that's what I want to talk more about, Brother Calvin, is what can we do and what can we offer young men so that they don't have to go through what many of us have gone through. I wouldn't want anybody to go through the challenges I've gone through, because I wasn't only affected, but it affected my wife, it affected my children, it affected all of my loved ones. Going back to your very first question, how did I feel? Well, not only did I feel like I was going to die, but all of my friends and family and everyone thought that I was going to die. And here it is today now. I went beyond what the doctor said, and I'm going into year almost 4 or 5 of survival, and people still, when I talk to them, they still, have in their spirit, and sometimes even come out of their mouth that they still think I'm going to die. But again, that just gives me more encouragement to keep working harder to try and show folk that I am a living testimony.
And that's outstanding. And as you were speaking that, I was just envisioning my own self that you have taken this to another level of being able to share this, speaking life. And that's what you're doing. You're speaking life over death.
Yes.
And that's the message that we have to send to our community over and over anyway. When we see so much death and destruction in our community. And once we move past one area, there's another challenge. But that same formula that you're using can be used in all walks of life, that we're more than conquerors. We are victorious over all of these things. So, Lewis, I'm really excited, and I'm looking forward to working with you in getting this message out to the community. So, community, this is another challenge. As we call out all brothers, Lewis Colson has answered the call. And we're calling out to you today to step up and step out to the challenges that our community face, especially with the issues of health among our community and our brothers.